Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at energy fuels. It is time for another update, and on this chart we have been tracking this idea of a 1-2 setup where now we would expect to form a third wave to the upside. And I have been mentioning this basically in every single video, but for this to be a reliable wave 3 we would expect to get here to the ideal target for such a movement, which is the 138.2% extension of the wave 1 around the $130 level. And since we have actually already formed the largest portion that is expected of a 5-wave move to the upside, and we have already formed the wave 1, 2, and 3, we wouldn't necessarily be looking with high consideration for the 5th wave to get to such levels. And while it's certainly not impossible, I have seen the wave 5 exceed even the wave 3 itself, even within larger wave 3 to the upside. It's not necessarily the most common outlook that we should have, it's not necessarily the most realistic expectation, and sure, this could work out even within an extension. This could be instead a wave 1 and we would have here a wave 2, and a third wave could still work out, but it's not necessarily a high probability scenario that we should expect. And in that case we actually need to consider a couple of other options. So what else could it work out into? And then it could be that this would instead be a wave 1, if we don't get to the ideal target. But that would not be necessarily a problem. It would just be a wave 1 part of this larger wave 3, and it would even have bullish implications in the longer term. Sure, we would expect a more significant correction now in a wave 2 once it is complete, but the third wave that is expected to follow would be even stronger than the initial movement to the upside, than what we were expecting initially for the internal wave 3, because once this third wave is complete, we would expect still a 4th and a 5th to complete the even larger structure, the overall wave 3. And again, that would actually have bullish implications, even though in the short term we would expect a more significant correction. But even other options are actually possible, and this could also work out within an ABC movement, in which case the ideal target would instead sit at the 100% extension of the wave A, which is around the $46 level instead. And in such an expectation, it would line up very well with only seeing a 5th wave still to form. And this would have even more bearish implications, even in the short term, but possibly even in the longer term, because if this is forming a larger ABC movement to the upside, well, it could be just part of a wave B within a larger ABC structure that could realistically take us even to new lows. Now, even if we build such a structure, it would not necessarily be my favorite interpretation. I could still even track a large leading diagonal. As long as we hold the area of support for a potential 1-2 setup, we could be tracking even the idea of a 1-2 setup within this area. But we would be expecting, lower targets. We wouldn't expect the 5th wave to get to such high proportions, and it's something we need to be aware of, because once we have something like an ABC within this area, we could realistically go even below the beginning of this entire uptrend. We could easily break even the $3 level and still hold an internal area of support part of a larger leading diagonal. But in the end, we would expect within all these scenarios to continue still higher at the moment, because we need still one more wave to the upside. We still need the 5th wave to have a full count within this area. And for that, we have been tracking this area of support for the wave 4 correction at the levels between the $17.6 all the way down to the $8.6 level. And as long as we hold even the 50% retracement, we can actually track even an impulse to form within this area, where instead we could see a 5-wave move emerge within this 5th wave. And it is a bit unfortunate that within this overall structure we could realistically also be tracking could be a leading within a wave 1, could be an ending diagonal within a wave C, doesn't matter exactly, but we could be tracking also a diagonal pattern, and in that case we could also see an ABC movement within this 5th wave, which will make it in the end much more difficult to track the actual top within this pattern, within this movement. Now, with that said, at the moment I would like to already have a bottom in place within this correction in wave 4, and we could account this as an ABC structure complete, and I wouldn't need any additional lows to actually consider that this structure is done to the downside, that the 5th wave has already started. And while we do have an area of resistance that we are actively tracking and that we can see is actively participating in the overall structure, because we have gotten rejected basically yeah, quite perfectly at the first level of resistance here in the more significant correction. And now again at the 61.8% retracement, yeah, very, very close, we have formed another more significant rejection. And while from this area we could be heading into a reset of the larger wave 4 in green, I'm also using it as a signal that a break above the 78.6% retracement at the $23 level could allow us, could tell us with an early hint that this structure to the downside within the wave 4 correction may be complete and that the fifth wave is even more likely to emerge. Now, within this wave 5, we have been tracking within this area at the moment only an ABC structure, and that is mainly because within this wave A, it is rather easy for me to consider it to only be an ABC movement. Yeah, I don't see a clear 5-wave structure within this area, even if it could work out. Yeah, I could track this as a 1, 2, 3, 4th, and the 5th. It could work out, but it's not necessarily the most obvious 5-wave move to the upside, which is why I have been tracking it at the moment at least as an ABC movement. And honestly, even if it were a 5-wave move, I could still be tracking the same ABC structure within this area, in which case, yeah, we would expect still continuation higher at the moment, yeah, especially if that was an initial 5-wave move. But ultimately, we would still need to see a break above the last level of resistance, as we don't have a larger 5-wave move to the upside within this area that I can consider as a wave 1 to be looking for a correction in a wave 2 that afterwards another wave to the upside would very, very easily break above the last level of resistance, that we wouldn't head into the resistance area within a 3-wave pattern. Yeah, this isn't necessarily a good thing because it could account for a complete correction, something like an ABC, something like a WXY, in which case a top may already be in place or in the very, very near term. But in the end, we don't control the market. We can only track the actual sentiment, the actual structure that is built within. Now, even though this wave A wasn't the most reliable setup, we have been tracking an area of support for continuation higher, and where it became interesting is actually internally, because once we actually formed the bottom here, we were able to identify an initial 5-wave move to the upside. Yeah, from this area, from this top, we were able to track an area of support for a correction within a wave 2 in a 3-wave move, yeah, quite perfectly within an ABC structure, and we were looking with high probability for a not a 5th wave, for a 3rd wave to emerge. Yeah, as long as we held here the area of support, we were looking with good probabilities for a 3rd wave to work out to the upside. And in the previous video, we were actually looking even internally within this wave 3, yeah, the wave 3 of the larger wave 3 of the even larger wave 3 to extend, because within this structure I have been tracking here an internal tiny 1-2 setup, and I will go even closer for this, but yeah, but we had here a tiny 1-2 setup, a 3rd wave up, 4th wave down, and I was tracking an ending diagonal within a wave 5. Now within this wave 5, I might even prefer that the internal wave 3, the overall entire wave 3 within this area, had only just topped now. Yeah, I wouldn't consider this to have formed necessarily a top here, and even though it's possible, I will be ultimately considering it in terms of support, in terms of a possibility, but I would actually prefer it to still have extended higher and to still be looking for another correction within a wave 4 and the 5th wave before I actually account for the even larger wave 3 to be complete. Yeah, I would still like to see another wave 5, yeah, a correction within wave 4 and another 5th wave to have a clearly full count within this entire movement to the upside. And for that, I have here an area of support that I'm providing you between the $18.5 all the way down to the $17 level, basically. Now, if it happens to break the 50% retracement, it would be quite a strong signal that this structure is complete, and unfortunately, we have only a very limited area of support for continuation lower, because even if I were to consider that this was a 1, 2, 3, 4th and the 5th complete, I would only be able to allow a slight adjustment within a correction in wave 4 down to the $16.8 level. And then if we actually fail to hold even this level of support, I would need to consider that this has unfolded to the upside more like a WXY movement, in which case, to be honest, we would need to be prepared for a large top within the yellow interpretation to be in place in something like a large ABC movement, in which case we should be prepared even for a reset of the green interpretation. So again, in the smaller time frame, I'm looking at the $16.7 level. Around that level, if we see a break below without forming another high, without continuing in this pattern, it would be a decent signal that this structure has completed only a WXY pattern, in which case we would have an ABC movement very prepared to unfold, very prepared to shift into lower areas, into lower prices within the wave 5 in green. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you want me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. And before I let you go, actually, I will provide you even here an internal area of resistance to be tracked for continuation higher, as we may even have an internal 5-way move to the downside within this area. But to be honest, in the 5-minute time frame, I won't actually go into a full count. But yeah, we may have a larger ABC pattern unfold, and we are looking here at the $19.6 level as a signal that continuation higher should be expected in a more direct fashion. And this is actually based on the latest low. If we continue lower, this area would need to be adjusted. But yeah, for now, this is it. Have a nice day. Bye bye.